I stood on the damp porch in Seattle, my shoulders aching from an 8-hour flight and a miserable layover in Denver. My son David had called me 3 times last week, begging me to come out for Thanksgiving. He sounded exhausted, claiming the family desperately needed to be together. As a 68-year-old widow who valued her quiet life in upstate New York, traveling during the holidays was my last choice. But he was my son, so I paid for a last-minute ticket and packed my bags. When the front door opened, nobody hugged me. David stood in the hallway next to his wife, Chloe. At their feet sat 2 matching luxury suitcases and a pair of golf bags. Behind them, my 2 grandchildren, 6-year-old Leo and 4-year-old Mia, were watching cartoons on the living room rug. "You'll babysit our children," David announced, pointing vaguely at the living room. "We're going on a trip." Chloe let out a sharp laugh, tossing her hair over her shoulder. "Don't let them eat too much sugar, Rosemary. We really need this couple's retreat." They laughed together, exchanging a look that told me exactly what this was a joke at my expense. They thought humiliating me was a harmless kickoff to their vacation. They had orchestrated my arrival, perfectly assuming I would be too tired and too guilty to refuse. I didn't cry. I didn't drop my bags in shock. I simply looked at the 2 adults standing in front of me, recognizing that the boy I raised had fully vanished into the entitled man before me. "Have a good drive," I replied, my voice completely steady. David blinked clearly, disappointed that I hadn't argued. They rolled their bags past me, hopped into their car, and sped off toward the mountains. As the taillights disappeared, I stepped inside and locked the door. They thought they had trapped me, but they had severely underestimated how I handled disrespect. I walked into the kitchen, placing my coat on a chair. The house was a disaster. Sticky countertops, a sink overflowing with dishes, and a mountain of laundry dumped on the dining table. Chloe had left a bright pink clipboard right next to the coffee maker. I picked it up. It was a 3-page schedule. She hadn't just expected me to watch the children. She expected me to be their unpaid maid. The list detailed exact meal times, laundry folding instructions, and a note to scrub the guest bathroom, since I would be using it. Next to the clipboard sat David's tablet, the screen glowing with an open email. It was the confirmation for their mountain resort. 3 nights, premium suite, daily spa treatments, and private dining. Out of pure curiosity, I tapped the screen to see the payment method. The last 4 digits of the card matched the joint emergency savings account I had opened for David 5 years ago. When my husband passed, I set aside a modest fund to help David and Chloe with unexpected medical bills or home repairs. My name remained on the account, and I still received the statements. I had noticed the balance dipping recently, but I assumed it was for Leo's braces. Instead, it was funding hot stone massages and room service. I set the tablet down and poured myself a glass of water. A familiar cold clarity settled over me. They had not just stolen my holiday, they had financed their deception with my money. I looked out the window at the gray Seattle sky. I was not going to spend my Thanksgiving washing Chloe's yoga pants, but I needed to secure my assets before I made my next move. I sat at the kitchen island and opened my banking app. Because the emergency account was a joint setup I had initiated, I had full administrative control. The balance sat at roughly $8,500. It took exactly 3 taps on my screen to transfer the entire amount back into my personal checking account. I didn't close the account. I simply left it with a balance of $12. Next, I opened my family cellular plan. I had been paying for David and Chloe's unlimited data for 6 years because David once complained about tight finances. I navigated to the user management page, selected both of their numbers, and clicked Suspend Service. I was not angry, just profoundly efficient. I refused to be a victim in my own family. If they wanted the luxury of an independent couple's retreat, they could experience the full financial reality of independence. A tug on my sweater pulled my attention down. Little Leo stood there rubbing his eyes. "Grandma, Mom said you were going to make us pancakes." I smiled, crouching down to his level. "I am going to make you the best pancakes you've ever had, sweetheart." I cooked them breakfast, listening to them chatter about their favorite toys. My grandkids were innocent in this scheme, and I would never abandon them or make them feel unwanted. However, I was absolutely not staying in this house. I pulled my phone from my pocket and scrolled through my contacts until I found the perfect solution to my babysitting problem. I was leaving, but I needed to arrange a proper handover first. While the kids ate, I walked into David's home office to find a pen. The desk was cluttered with mail, mostly final notices and credit card offers. But what caught my eye was a spiral notebook left open beside the keyboard. It was Chloe's handwriting, unmistakable in its sharp, aggressive loops. The page was titled, "5-Year Plan Funding." I normally wouldn't read someone else's notes, but my name was bulleted halfway down the page. Step 1. Get Mom here for Thanksgiving, free sitter. Step 2. Pitch the mother-in-law sweet idea. Tell her New York is too cold. Step 3. Sell her house. Use equity for our kitchen remodel and the extension. Step 4. Mom covers childcare full-time. I read the words 3 times. They didn't just want a free weekend. They viewed me as a walking checkbook and a live-in servant. They genuinely believed I was a lonely, weak widow who would trade her home and her dignity just to be near them. I closed the notebook. Any lingering guilt I had about ruining their vacation instantly evaporated. I walked back into the kitchen. The kids were happily watching a movie on the sofa. I picked up my phone and dialed Chloe's mother, Brenda. Brenda lived only 20 minutes away. She was a practical, no-nonsense woman who had always turned a blind eye to her daughter's manipulative behavior. "Rosemary," Brenda answered, sounding surprised. "I thought you were in New York." "I flew in this morning," I replied cheerfully. "David and Chloe surprised me. I'm at their house now, and I have a wonderful Thanksgiving surprise for you, too. Can you come over right away?" "Oh, of course. Give me 30 minutes. Brenda had no idea she was about to become the new babysitter. Brenda pulled into the driveway exactly 30 minutes later, carrying a box of pastries. I met her at the door with my coat already on my suitcase, resting neatly by the porch steps. "Rosemary." "Where are you going?" she asked, her smile faltering as she stepped inside. "Back to the airport," I said calmly. I handed her Chloe's pink clipboard. Brenda stared at the strict chore list, her eyes widening as she read her daughter's demands. David and Chloe went to a resort in the mountains. I explained, keeping my tone perfectly conversational. They assumed I would provide free childcare and housekeeping for the next 4 days. Unfortunately, I have a life of my own. The kids have eaten. The emergency contacts are on the fridge, and I have a flight to catch. Brenda flushed a deep shade of red. "Chloe just left you here." Without asking, "She did," I said. "And since you're local, I knew you wouldn't mind stepping in. They are your grandchildren after all." Brenda opened her mouth to argue, but she knew she couldn't. Defending Chloe's behavior would mean admitting her daughter was incredibly selfish. Instead, she set the pastries on the counter, looking completely defeated. I'll watch them." "Thank you, Brenda." I walked past her, pausing at the key rack by the door. Hanging there was the spare key to the second car sitting in the driveway, a mid-sized SUV I had purchased for David 3 years ago. The title was still fully in my name. I took the key, slipped it into my purse, and walked out the door. I loaded my suitcase into the SUV and started the engine. I was halfway down the interstate toward the airport when my phone finally lit up with David's name. I let the phone ring until it went to voicemail. It rang again. And again. On the 4th attempt, I pressed accept and connected it to the car's Bluetooth. "Mom." What did you do to the bank account? David's voice echoed through the car, laced with panic rather than his usual arrogance. I transferred my money back to my personal account. I answered smoothly, keeping my eyes on the road. We're at the resort front desk. They tried to run the card for the deposit and incidentals, and it declined. You have to put the money back right now, Mom. It's so embarrassing. I'm sorry you're embarrassed, David, but that account was for medical emergencies, not luxury spa retreats. You'll have to use your own credit card. I could hear Chloe screaming in the background. Tell her to fix it. Tell her to transfer it back. We don't have enough room on our cards, David pleaded. Mom, please. We drove 2 hours to get here. Then I suggest you drive 2 hours back, I said. By the way, Brenda is at the house watching the kids. I left her Chloe's chore list. I'm sure she'll have the guest bathroom scrubbed before you get home. Silence hung on the line for 3 seconds before David realized what I was saying. Wait. Where are you? I'm heading to the airport. I've decided not to stay where I'm treated like the help. You can't just leave, he shouted, his entitlement flaring up again. You're ruining our holiday. You ruined it the second you opened that door and laughed at me, I replied. Have a safe drive home. I tapped the screen, ending the call. The real shock for them wasn't the declined card. It was what awaited them when they finally returned. The drive back to SeaTac Airport was surprisingly peaceful. The familiar Seattle drizzle coated the windshield, and the rhythmic sweep of the wipers matched the calm, steady beating of my heart. I thought about the SUV I was driving. I had purchased it 3 years ago when Chloe complained that their compact car wasn't safe enough for the children. I paid in full, but I kept the title in my name, a quiet habit of financial prudence my late husband had taught me. Today, that habit was my greatest asset. I pulled into the airport's massive long-term parking structure, navigating up to the 4th floor of the terminal garage. I found a well-lit spot in row H, backed the vehicle in perfectly, and turned off the ignition. For a moment, I just sat there in the quiet cabin. I didn't sell the car, nor did I report it stolen. I didn't need to. The vehicle legally belonged to me, and I was simply exercising my right to store my property wherever I pleased. I took my suitcase from the trunk, locked the doors securely, and dropped the heavy key fob into the bottom of my purse. Before walking toward the sky bridge, I pulled out my phone and took a clear photo of the parking space number painted on the concrete pillar. I opened my text messages, selected David's name, and attached the image. I typed out a brief factual message. The SUV is parked at SeaTac Terminal Garage Level 4, Row H. The keys are flying back to New York with me. If you want the convenience of a second vehicle, you will need to purchase one yourselves. Do not contact me for the rest of the week. As soon as the message delivered, I went into my settings and blocked both his and Chloe's numbers. Walking through the terminal to find a ticketing kiosk, my rolling suitcase felt practically weightless. I had spent so many years terrified of being cut out of my son's life that I had let him slowly cut away my self-respect instead. I bought a one-way ticket for the next flight east. The gate agent smiled warmly as she handed over my boarding pass. Heading home for Thanksgiving? She asked, glancing at my small bag. Yes. I smiled back, feeling a genuine sense of relief wash over me. For the first time in a very long time, I actually am. By the time David and Chloe arrived back at their house, humiliated, broke, and forced to face a furious Brenda, their free ride was permanently over, and I was already thousands of miles away. The winter air in Syracuse hit my face the moment I stepped out of the terminal, sharp and freezing, but wonderfully refreshing. My older daughter Claire was already waiting at the curb in her station wagon. When I climbed into the passenger seat, she took one long look at my face, noticed my single suitcase, and let out a knowing laugh. You didn't even stay 24 hours, did you, Mom? She asked, pulling smoothly into the highway traffic. Claire had warned me not to go. She knew exactly how David and Chloe operated, having distanced herself from their constant drama years ago. I stayed exactly as long as I needed to. I replied, adjusting my wool scarf and turning up the seat heater. I gave her a brief rundown of the clipboard, the resort, and the suspended accounts. Claire shook her head, though she didn't look surprised. Good for you. I'm just glad you finally put your foot down. We spent Thanksgiving at Claire's house, and the contrast to Seattle was night and day. Her home was warm, lived in, and filled with the rich smells of roasting turkey and cinnamon. Nobody handed me a chore list. Nobody expected me to scrub baseboards or act as an unpaid nanny. Instead, Claire handed me a glass of red wine, and we spent the afternoon chopping vegetables together, playing board games with her teenage sons, and talking about everything except the chaos unfolding on the West Coast. Later that evening, while the rest of the house was watching a movie, I sat by the fireplace and opened my iPad to check my email. Since I had blocked David's phone number, he had resorted to the only channel left open. His email was a frantic block of text. Mom, my cell phone isn't working. Chloe's is dead too. Why does the carrier say our service is suspended? Also, Brenda is furious with us and stormed out the second we walked in. We have no groceries in the fridge, no SUV, and I just had to walk 2 miles to the convenience store in the pouring rain to buy milk. Please call me. You're taking this way too far. I read the words carefully, looking for an apology. There wasn't one. He was only upset that his comfortable life had suddenly become inconvenient. I didn't reply. I simply clicked the archive button and closed the screen. Boundaries require letting the other person feel the absolute discomfort of their choices. I poured myself another half glass of wine and watched the fire crackle. I had drawn my line in the sand, and I was perfectly content to enforce it. I knew he would try one last desperate move, and 3 weeks later, he finally showed up at my door. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on a kitchen towel and looked through the peephole. David stood on my porch, shivering in the New York winter air, holding a small travel bag. I unlocked the door and pulled it open, leaving the storm door shut between us. "Mom," he said, offering a weak, apologetic smile. "Can I come in? It's freezing." "You can stand right there," I said, my voice polite but firm. "Why are you here, David?" His shoulders slumped. "Things are a mess, Mom. Chloe and I have been fighting nonstop. We had to take out a high-interest loan just to buy a used sedan to get to work. I had to get a prepaid phone plan. I came to apologize. We made a mistake." "You didn't make a mistake," I corrected him. "A mistake is dropping a plate. What you did was a calculated plan to exploit me. You wrote it down in a notebook, David. I read it." He went completely pale. The script he had prepared vanished from his mind. "You were going to trick me into selling my home to fund your lifestyle," I continued. "You viewed me as an asset to be stripped, not a mother to be loved." "Chloe wrote that," he stammered, stepping closer to the glass. "That was her idea, not mine. I never agreed to it. But you didn't stop her. You went along with the jokes. You drove off to the resort." I looked at him, feeling a strange sense of peace. "You're a grown man. Stop blaming your wife for your own lack of character." He looked down at his boots, shivering. He expected me to open the door. He expected the old Rosemary to cave. "I love you, David," I said through the screen. "And because I love you, I am no longer going to cripple you by fixing your life." He looked up, his eyes red. "Are you cutting me off completely?" "I am cutting off the entitlement," I explained. "There will be no more joint accounts, no more paid phone bills. My car remains parked at the airport until I decide to fly back and sell it. You will never ask me to babysit as a demand, and you will never disrespect me in your home or mine. Okay." he whispered, finally understanding that my limits were absolute. Okay, Mom. I'm sorry. If you want to build a real relationship with me, we can start with a phone call next Sunday. From your prepaid phone. I stepped back, preparing to close the wooden door. There's a motel 2 miles down the highway. Have a safe flight back tomorrow. I closed the door and slid the deadbolt into place. I didn't feel guilty as I walked back to my kitchen to finish cooking dinner. I felt liberated. For the first time in years, my home was truly mine. My money was secure, and my peace was untouched. Reconciliation might happen someday, but it would happen on a foundation of mutual respect, not manipulation. I poured myself a cup of tea and watched the snow fall outside my window. They thought I was just an old woman they could push around. They learned the hard way that the person holding the purse strings also holds the power to cut them. If there's one thing this whole experience taught me, it's that love and boundaries can and absolutely should exist in the same room. For years, I confused being a supportive mother with being a permanent safety net. I thought that if I just gave enough, helped enough, and compromised enough, they would eventually appreciate it. But I realized that endless accommodation doesn't create gratitude. It just breeds entitlement. Setting a hard boundary didn't mean I stopped loving my son. It just meant I finally started respecting myself enough to say, no. I learned that you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to, and you certainly don't have to stay in a house where you are treated as a convenience rather than a person. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do for your family is to step back and let them feel the weight of their own choices. I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you had to draw a tough line with someone you love? How did you handle it? Let's talk about it down in the comments. I read every single one, and I love seeing how we can all support each other. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It means the world to me and helps us grow this amazing community. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, remember to protect your peace.